About 8 months ago, back in July, I uploaded my first ever cosplay vlog about a character from Deltarune called Elnina. I now finally have a major update. Part 1, everything new about Elnina. I tried to make an Elnina cosplay before the video game Deltarune released its next chapters with the character in it. And was I successful? Barely. I didn't make the costume by the day the game came out, but I made it wearable about a week afterwards for a convention that I went to. But after that convention, I put the whole cosplay down and I didn't touch it for 6 months. So now I finally have the updates on what I've done to the costume. There's more things that I would like to do for this costume, but for now I'm considering it complete. All of the basic elements that I needed, they're all completed, give or take, but I do want to do more on the skirt, and then I think there's like some accessories that I would be interested in doing as well. I think I'll start with the belt just because it was fairly simple. So you guys may have seen that I got this belt. It was a pleather belt from a thrift store. I literally just traced the belt out onto the fabric that I wanted and sewed those two pieces together, turned them inside out, stuck the belt in. And I did manage to do the inside, the lining part, backwards because I couldn't get a full length of this fabric. I had to sew two pieces together. Now, I don't know if I gave like a full 360 view of this hat when I did my last video. I do think that if people want to make this cloud hat, there's so many improvements that I would recommend. The first one is when you're doing your pattern, to have the sides like poke out a lot more, maybe following like this curve, just because in this section here specifically, you can see my wig cap still when I wear this hat. When in doubt, add more cloud, more stuffing, because yeah, this is an insane amount of stuffing in here. All cotton batting mostly, and you can kind of tell here with some of the ways that I did these shapes. I did hand stitch in a few spots to get more of a indent. Those parts do actually go all the way through my lining, but I tried to keep them specifically on my seam lines so you can't really see them. So yes, my lining for the most part looks really clean. I was trying to tighten the inside of this hat as much as possible. So the first attempt I made was hand stitching. I think this is twill tape. I'm not fully sure because it was just a random thing that I had in my drawer. And I tried to use that to kind of like tighten and stabilize. I don't think it worked. If you have the same problem in a hat, skip that, go straight to hand gathering. So I did, you can kind of see these two stitches that are parallel here. These are hand gathered stitches, so you can see how the lining kind of bunches in. That's what I ended up doing. And then finally, so you guys may have seen, I put Velcro to hold the chin strap together. And when I wore it to my first con, I found that anytime I would like move my jaw or breathe, this would just pop open because it was Velcro. So what I did is I changed it to a hook and eye, which not only makes it looser on my neck, it's not affecting my breathing. This is solid. So no matter how much like force, unless I pull it apart myself, it's going to stay together. I did also finally write out what I did for both the hat and the skirt that I'm going to show you guys. I posted both of my Tumblr blog posts about them. I think I added some measurements, but I would say take your own measurements. But I wrote them all down on my Tumblr blog where I make posts based on parts of my costume and how I make them. I normally, for most costumes, I try and update them as I'm making the costumes. Normally it'll take me 6 months to make a cosplay. And if I'm in the mood to write a blog post, I'm going to do it. Because I was making it in such a rush, like in 2 months, trying to get it done before the game came out, I just didn't make any blog posts, so it's just been slowly catching up. I don't post Instagram stories when I'm sewing or anything. It'll be on my Tumblr. And then my Bluesky is where you'll get the most photos uploaded, I think. And then if you just want to see a single photo of a costume whenever I finish a costume, that's just my Instagram, but I use that a lot less nowadays. This skirt now finally has a waistband. I just used the same fabric that I had for the hoodie because I'm having this underneath my belt, and so I kind of had the thought, if part of the waistband of the skirt is visible, then it kind of blends in with my hoodie, which works, but underneath it does look a little odd, I think, when it appears, just like little slivers of it. Literally just took my measurement, made like 2 rectangles, sewed them together, flipped them inside out, attached them, and then I used hooks and eyes to attach above the zipper. And then on the lining, I can show you guys, I ladder stitched the linings together. So this was, I mean, I think it only took me like 2 days. So that's all of these. Hand stitched the straight lines in between each of the linings. And then I do have these channels. You can't see them as well on the denim, but they are still very much here. I'm glad I have them in because I do still want to someday be able to make the skirt lift up. And so this is what those channels are for, is when I put something in, when I finally get it to work, then that way I'll be able to lift each petal individually. But for now, they literally just like visual noise. They're there. They do literally nothing. This is from the recycled jeans. There was a knee hole that was worn out. It was initially quite open. You could see a lot of the lining. You can kind of see it when I turned it up. But I must have put it on the front because I thought that I would have time to put like a patch on it. All I've done so far is I hand stitched around it so that it lays flat. One day I will make a cross stitch patch for it. I'm currently thinking right now that it will be an Elnina and Lanino cross stitch patch, and that would just be more of like a fun side project than anything. Again, I've made a longer post of how I made literally just this skirt. I don't include these channels because they don't do anything except for add more puckering. Back in 2022, I used a sewing machine for the first time, and I made a Howl's Moving Castle cosplay, and the jacket, of course, was a complete mess, and I didn't finish it. And I revisited it last summer, so in 2025, 3 years later, and I was able to solve all of the problems and finish it within 6 hours. I knew there that I have a huge skill jump, so I definitely consider myself a novice sewer, and I'm sure that anyone looking at my work, which again, Elnina is my best work, like this is literally the peak of my skill currently. I mean, this was insane. This was so much improvisation. And then this was just, I was sewing so much that I've become a lot more confident with the machine. But I think that anyone who looks at my seams can tell that for one, I haven't been professionally trained or like properly trained. It's literally just self-taught, winging it, and having just the audacity to make insane stuff. In a few years, I will know how to make this skirt open like an umbrella. That's the end goal. I want the silhouette that Elnina has in the game. Now, it's possible I put this in my thumbnail, but the most exciting part of my Elnina cosplay is that this is my first costume that I felt qualified for a cosplay contest. So I competed in my first ever cosplay contest with Elnina. I really enjoyed my experience, so I am thinking that I will eventually start focusing more into contests. For now, I still need to learn the basics, and I have a few costumes that I definitely want to have under my belt, like absolutely like top priority. I want to get those done first. I went in with no expectations. I was just like, I get to finally experience what this is like as a contestant because I've watched so many, and I do enjoy watching them, but it was also really cool to actually see the contestants in person. Like beforehand, I was able to be like 1 meter to 3 meters away from all these costumes, and so then from up close you can see like the skill level and the amount of detail and the amount of techniques being used in these costumes that you can't see from the stage and you can't get from like the 30-second announcement that you get. So it was so cool seeing them, and also seeing how far advanced people are. Me doing seams exactly the way that I wanted them to be is still a fairly rare occasion. Like, it's a cause for celebration. So it was really cool seeing other costumes and seeing kind of where I can go with cosplay. I'm gonna put a link below where you can watch the video of the contest, all of the contestants. I'm at 4 minutes and 55 seconds in, and I'm there for about 30 seconds, but I definitely recommend watching the whole thing because everyone did amazing and there were so many cool and creative costumes, so I definitely recommend watching that. And I'm sure you guys may have noticed, but I did in fact get the Deltarune merchandise with Elnina on it. I think I keep tilting over there, but you guys can also see the Nino. I'm not sure if I made it fully clear, but I would not consider my first video on Elnina to be a tutorial. I definitely want it to be a jumping off point for people, so anyone also wanting to make Elnina or a similar character with similar elements, you can definitely take my previous vlog, this vlog and my Tumblr posts as a reference to see what I did, but I highly recommend to please improve it. Literally, I consider this hat my second prototype. Like, I made my mock-up, I made this one, and if I was actually wanting this to look extremely professional and well done, I would make a third one, but I cannot be bothered. I'm proud of this and I enjoy wearing it to conventions, so I'm fine with my wig cap showing, but this is more of a prototype. This is a suggestion on where to start when planning this hat. With Deltarune and Undertale characters, they're pixelated, they're small, they're open to so much interpretation. These are the types of characters that you can make that are fully like personalized to what you want to do and what you're passionate about making. Because for example, and I'm probably going to reblog some of this fan art to my cosplay blog, there's so many interpretations for Elnina's hair. Like, I've seen some fan art and one was amazing. It was Elnina had hairstyles that would change based on different types of clouds, like real life cloud formations and shapes. And then also fan art where people were reinterpreting the outfit or designing new outfits for Elnina. So I think that there is a lot of flexibility and creativity that can be done for cosplaying Elnina, especially because they're so unique. Like, they've got blue skin, they've got some crazy type of white hair that you can really do anything with, and then like a pretty iconic like blue and yellow shades that you can play with quite a lot. So don't take my first video as a tutorial or like the correct way to do it. There's no correct way. It's pixelated character. There's just different ways to interpret it. I do really want to see other Elnina cosplays. If you've made a cosplay of Elnina, you can definitely tag me on social media. So another exciting part of me finally finishing Elnina is that they are my first non-binary character that I've ever cosplayed. Honestly, I genuinely had no idea that they would be. Not only was I planning on doing the cosplay for about 2 years, I was also, in the last 4 years or so, I've been considering a few other characters that are non-binary to cosplay. I had no idea which one would end up being the first, because obviously I have to actually finish the costume and start the costume. I haven't started any others either. Also because we didn't really know as a fandom if Elnina would be non-binary before the game came out. We did have a little bit of an inkling because of the names, so La Niño and El Nina. People were kind of already getting non-binary genderqueer interpretations and considering that as an option. So I did see that and I was pretty excited about it. Obviously we had no concrete idea, and I think before the game came out, Toby Fox had already revealed one of the dialogue sentences of Elnina's was to call herself a weather girl, so it was still kind of vague and up in the air. In the game, Elnina is referred to with both she and they pronouns by other characters, and then Lenino is referred to with both he and they pronouns. Deltarune already has a few non-binary characters. The most notable one is, of course, Chris, the playable character who uses they them pronouns exclusively. And I want to be very clear, I'm very, very proud to be able to cosplay a non-binary character, and I'm so glad to see so much media representation of cool non-binary characters with a wide variety of gender identities and presentations. So I'm going to dedicate the second half of my video to talk about non-binary representation in media. I'm going to talk about not only the non-binary characters that I'd like to cosplay, but also a few that I personally found intriguing as forms of representation and as interesting perspectives about gender. I'm curious about you guys as well, if you have any non-binary characters that you're hoping to cosplay or that you have already cosplayed. And you can also let me know if you have any characters that helped you understand your own experience with gender. So my first ever cosplan of a non-binary character was kind of, again, by surprise. I had a friend who wanted to cosplay from Attack on Titan, so I watched the first season of the anime, and I really felt drawn to this one character, Hange, Zoe, or Hanji. So because I had only seen the anime, I didn't realize that they were more of an ambiguous gender. In the manga, the author asked for the character's gender to be up to the reader's interpretation, and in translations, the character has no gendered pronouns. When I learned that, I was pretty disappointed that the anime just kind of cut that whole identity away from the character, but also, since I've only seen the anime, I can't comment too much on the manga. Currently, my friend is no longer interested in cosplaying Attack on Titan, so it's not currently anywhere in my cosplans. but Hanzoe was my first non-binary character cosplan. If you've been following me for years on either TikTok or Instagram, you may have noticed that I participated in not one but 2 Monster High cosplay groups in 2023. They were both so much fun, and I learned a lot about making both of those cosplays, and especially about better time management, because once you're participating in a cosplay group, you're not the only person affected if you don't finish the cosplay by the deadline. I ended up cosplaying Portergeist for a group that gave me 4 months of notice, and then Laguna Blue for a group that gave me a full year's notice. And so that way I was able to stretch outside of my crafting comfort zone, and I really challenged myself to make that cosplay, and I learned a lot. But when I was deciding what characters I wanted to cosplay for Monster High, I came up with a short list of kind of my biggest choices, and aside from those 2, obviously, I would love to cosplay Draculaura because I love vampires, but the next one would be Frankie Stein. At the time, I was most drawn to a single episode of the animated series called The Adventures of the Ghoul Squad, where the main Monster High ghouls are transformed into fairies. So this Frankie specifically. Now that I've learned a little bit more about Monster High, there's quite a few more Frankie Stein outfits that I would love to cosplay. In Generation 3 of the dolls in the franchise, Frankie Stein is revealed to have they/them pronouns. For me, I retroactively consider all generations of Frankie Stein to have they/them pronouns, but I think they used she/her pronouns in previous generations, so there's a lot of flexibility in terms of gender interpretation for Frankie. So while Frankie is not currently one of my cosplay priorities, I am very open to cosplaying them in the future, especially if there's anyone else who's wanting to participate in a Monster High cosplay group. Finally, I have a cosplan that is currently way out of my skill set, but it is a major cosplay dream. Der Tod is the embodiment of death in a German musical called Elisabeth das Musical. This musical is based on the life of the Empress Elizabeth of Austria. This one is much more vague in terms of representation, and for people who are wary of non-human, non-binary entities and feel that those may not represent a human non-binary experience, be warned. But to me, he is extremely fascinating and inspirational. Most productions use masculine titles and pronouns for him, but he appears to characters in the way they will be most drawn to him, gender fluidity included. He also multiplies, so there are multiple scenes in which there is more than one actor on stage portraying death, and so it shows that even the lead actor is not the only face of death, but one of many. Der Tod, death, is separated from a lot of the human characters, being that he is a physical manifestation of a concept. In one significant part of the musical, the Mayerling affair, death appears to the character Rudolph wearing a dress. This could be a nod to one of Rudolph's mistresses who was with him at the time, or that Der Tod embodies multiple genders, or simply that Der Tod appears as a gender that Rudolph is drawn to. When I introduce people to this musical, I usually show them the 2004 version with Mate Cameras, mostly because the camera quality is a lot better and they have an additional song between Death and Elizabeth. But if you are particularly intrigued by Der Tod's gender presentation, the original 1992 version might be more on your radar. Uwe Kroger plays a more ethereal, androgynous, and otherworldly interpretation of Der Tod, and honestly, if I could look like that all of the time, I would be unstoppable. For Der Tod, I most want to cosplay the green Mayerling dress, and then after that, I would attempt to tackle Elisabeth's dress from Wenig Tanzinville in the 2004 version, and then after that, I would be open to cosplaying Der Tod's standard outfit, the blue and black suit, especially if I had someone to cosplay as Elisabeth with me. So I tried to think back to some media that I've consumed with non-binary characters that I've found the most impactful or intriguing. To start this section of the video, I would like to clarify that I identify pretty heavily in the woman category of the gender spectrum, and I consider myself to be cis. So in that way, I am nowhere near the authority on the subject of non-binary representation. I've had times in my life where the term tomboy and the term gender non-conforming have been very helpful in describing and understanding myself. Other than receiving the usual critiques of not performing femininity enough or properly, I haven't experienced much discrimination for my gender presentation. My recommendations for non-binary representation that delves into some people's experiences include: number 1, Gonzo from the Muppets. If you've seen the vlog by Aiden and Elizabeth, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite videos on YouTube. They have an amazing in-depth video about Gonzo, and it is how I learned about him being neither. None of the above. To summarize, Gonzo is neither a man nor a woman, and chooses to describe himself as a whatever. This Muppets comic strip describes it more clearly than I ever could, and I feel incredibly seen by Gonzo in this way. Number 2 is a book character. I read this book in 2022, so bear with me if I get some of this wrong. But the character Pen in the book Girl Man's Up really spoke to me in some ways. So disclaimer, Pen is 16 and behaves very immaturely in many ways, and this book is excellent in describing the struggles of growing up and navigating relationships and social skills. So not all of this book will be relatable to adults, and you may find the main character quite frustrating. There were a few sections that really felt impactful, including one that I took a photo of. Here is a scene where Pen describes her gender feelings in relation to the girl she has a crush on. There's a part of me that totally knows I could be her boyfriend. I don't want her to think of me as a boy or a boy substitute, though. I want to be a boyfriend who is a girl. I have no idea how to explain that stuff to anyone, let alone a girl I like. I just wish it was all understood. This book delves into gender identity and how it is affected by and relates to other people. And that last line that I shared, I just wish it was all understood, really describes how frustrating it can feel to have to find words to describe oneself, and how jarring it can feel to have to explain things that cis people may not have to. Like, there are pre-established gender norms that some people may feel are easy to conform to, or that they land close enough to their own desires and identity that they have an easier time explaining and describing themselves to others. My final example is not a non-binary character, but a trans man. The Polish film Fanfic, which is based on a book of the same name, which I hope will one day be translated in English or French because I really want to read it, follows the experience of a teenager who realizes he is transgender and navigates coming out and transitioning while falling in love with another male classmate. There are quite a few moments in the film that are likely relatable and impactful to trans people, especially trans masculine people. For me, the fanfic scenes were the ones that stood out to me, especially the first few, which had me intrigued by the film. So while I do not relate to most of Toshik's experience, there were a few scenes that I could see a bit of myself reflected back at me. Now finally, an honorable mention. There is a K-pop group that debuted last year called X-Love, whose concept is a genderless concept. So while none of the members identify as genderless, their main goal is to critique the gender expectations and rules in Korea and the K-pop industry specifically. And I really enjoyed them last year. I had a great summer being a huge fan, but then unfortunately the company they're under chose to use AI for their latest album. So ever since then, I've kind of fallen away from the fandom, but I do still like the members and I like what the group stands for and what the group is trying to communicate in the industry. So I do recommend them if that is something you're interested in still. Other than that, I have been really inspired in the last few years seeing more people cast in stage shows regardless of their own genders. So seeing more women and non-binary actors getting roles as men is really inspiring to me, because when I was involved in theater, I kept hearing that there were not enough guys to perform certain shows, and naturally I couldn't really dream of ever being cast as a male main character. Again, if you follow any of my cosplay accounts, you may notice that I don't mind cosplaying characters of all genders. For me, cosplaying is less about portraying my own gender identity and more of dressing as a character that I like and that I think looks cool. There is a term in the cosplay community called crossplay, which means dressing as a character that has a different gender to yourself. I think it's similar to the term cross-dressing. For some, this word helps describe their experience or explain it to people who don't cosplay. I don't particularly find much use in the word to describe my own costumes. I consider it a lot more neutrally. I cosplay, I make costumes. Some of those costumes are male characters, some of them are female characters, some of them are now non-binary characters. For me, they're costumes that I look forward to wearing and that I hope to feel confident in. I think my perspective comes from the way that I got into cosplay, which was Halloween costumes, and my first ever character costume was when I was Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars The Clone Wars that my mom bought for me from Toys R Us when I was 10. Anyways, that's my personal experience with gender and fandom and cosplay. Obviously, everyone has their own experiences and reasons for choosing the characters that they cosplay, but I felt like this was an important conversation to open up on my channel, and cosplaying Elnina feels like a good opportunity to bring it up. There's a lot of fear and prejudice in the world right now regarding gender, and a lot of people wanting to control how people express themselves and dress. Some of that is likely from the fear of the unknown and confusion from learning about other people's experiences with gender. So I hope that this video can help as a crumb of an introduction. Having access to non-binary characters and other LGBTQ plus characters helps everyone. Not only does it mean more cool characters to cosplay, but seeing people living and thriving outside of the binary can help anyone see other ways that they can exist in the world. Customize your own character a little more. Dress up as an umbrella cloud. Anyways, thanks for watching. You can subscribe if you'd like to see more cosplay content. I'm also doing a few videos about books that I'm reading and occasional crafting videos as well. So subscribe if you are curious about where this channel is going, because honestly, me too. And I hope I will see you in my next video.